Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, is Pennsylvania's information when someone purchases a firearm, is it the same test or background check or whatever as every other state in the United States?
No, ma'am.
So if someone was to purchase a firearm in your state, there would be different requirements for NCIC checks?
Oh, to legally purchase?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I said purchase. I know that there's been some blurring of the lines here, but I'm talking about purchasing a firearm.
I don't know if it's the same in every state. I imagine it's, if not, it's pretty close. You've got to do the NCIC checks. There's a waiting period. You know, there is a process.
I will, in full disclosure, let you know that I am a former police officer from Florida.
Yeah.
And I worked on this a lot. I was actually one of those who had to go out when that failed and had to retrieve firearms from felons who weren't supposed to have them. So I understand the system quite well. And I've listened as it seems that it's blurred between gun ownership and gun purchasing. So I wanted to ask you that when you have your records expunged in your state, what does that mean?
Well, that means that all official records of an individual's arrest would be removed from whatever files we have.
Could they then get a firearm permit in your state?
They could get one if the records have been expunged and you ran the records, you wouldn't have anything to go on.
So in 2009, when this, I believe it was Mr. Hill you mentioned, when he had, in 2005 he had his altercation with you, but in 2009 I believe it was when he went to Florida, and at that time his records were expunged. Is that correct?
I don't know if his records were expunged or not in 2009. Eventually, I'm not certain.
Okay. Well, that's what the report says. So Florida would not have known about the revocation unless your state would have notified them. Do you notify other states that you have reciprocity with when you revoke someone's permit?
We do send out notices when we revoke an individual. I don't know if all 25 states, if it's done electronically, because not every state has that capacity, or if it's done, you know, by telephone or letter, and I don't know what they do with the information once they get it.
Well, I can tell you that we would have paid close attention to it in our agency. So, you know, the reason I'm asking these questions is because as a former law enforcement officer, I've heard the description of a 3 a.m. stop. I will tell you that I would be happy to know that someone has a concealed firearm permit with them so that I can then pull them or ask them to come away from the vehicle, ask them where their weapon is, actually know if they are actually carrying. It's a lot easier for me to determine the threat based on if someone is carrying or not. If they tell me up front they're carrying, at least I know that they're carrying. And then I can go forward with whether or not it's a legal permit or not a legal permit, but I need to be able to determine if I'm going to be safe in doing my duties. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, if they tell you.
Well, you're saying if they produce this permit, it may be false, it may not, and you're going to have to, and you felt that that would be more of a danger to your police officer, whereas I feel like if they produce a permit, then they're telling me that there could possibly be a weapon within their vicinity, and that I am now aware of that. And I felt like that would make me feel a little bit more knowledgeable about the stop at 3 a.m. in the morning, because I've done many of those.
Well, my issue was how do you verify whether or not it's a legitimate permit? There is no database.
Well, at that time in the morning, wouldn't you be more likely to be verifying where that weapon is and what kind of custody there is to it?
Ma'am, I've probably made more stops than you. I've been on the job longer. So, but at some point in time, you're going to be making, at least attempting to verify whether or not the permit is legitimate. And it might or might not be legitimate.
But the description you gave made it seem like it was more on the safety of the police officer, and I am for safety of police officers. My late husband is on the wall here at Judiciary Square, so I really understand what law enforcement does and does not do, as being part of the law enforcement community for over 17.5 years before being elected. So the difference that we've heard today, where we've seen the lines blurred, is more along the lines of gun ownership versus a permit. If you are not legally allowed to own a gun, whether you have a permit or not, you're not supposed to be able to purchase that gun. Is that not correct?
If you're not legally allowed, if you can go to another state whose laws are different from your own jurisdiction and get a permit.
I'm talking about purchasing the gun.
Gentleman's time has expired.